Namaste. This topic I want to talk about today is a difficult one. If you're in the midst of grief and mourning, and if you are right now in the rawness of losing someone, I want you to know that I see you. And I want you to stay with me through this, because what I'm going to share with you took me years to arrive at. Every so often, someone contacts me privately and they ask me about death and grief, about what happens, about how to carry the grief, as if I would know, as if I have some special hotline to the other side. I study Jyotish. I read personal Vedic charts. But this question they are asking me, this one, it's the question nobody fully answers. A few years ago, I lost my dear father. And then, within a few years from then, I lost my dear mother. And those two losses, they changed me in a way nothing else in my life had changed me. The ground shifted, and it didn't shift back. What I discovered, though, what the grief cracked open in me, is that death might be the greatest teacher available to a human being. And it's not because it takes something valuable from you. It's because of what it forces you to look at. I became fascinated with the subject. Obsessed, honestly. I went deep into the ancient teachings, into the yogic traditions, into what the wisest teachers across thousands of years actually had to say about this. Grief, death. And today, I want to share with you what that journey, or where that journey took me. What I believe, what brought me peace, and what might bring you some peace too. There is a story. It comes from the Buddhist tradition. And I think it's the most honest thing that I've ever encountered on the subject of death and grief. A woman comes to Buddha. She's carrying her young son in her arms. He's dead. She has been walking for a long time. She's desperate. She's past desperate. She doesn't have a word for what she's going through. She lays the child at Buddha's feet and asks him to bring her son back to life. And the Buddha doesn't say no. He says, yes, but first, you need to bring me something. And he says, go to the houses in the village, 50 houses. Knock on each door. Ask them if they have lost someone. And if you find even one house, one single household that has never known the loss of a loved one, bring me a mustard seed from that house, and I will raise your son. So she goes. She knocks on the first door. Have you lost someone? She asked. The family says, yes, our grandfather, last year. Second door. Have you lost someone? Yes, a child 3 years ago. Third door. Yes, a husband, a wife, a parent, a sibling. Door after door, house after house. By the time she finishes, by the time she returns to the Buddha with no mustard seed, something had shifted in her. She understood. She could finally feel that it was death and loss, that death and loss was shared, that she was not the only one who had ever stood in this place, completely grief-stricken by loss. That grief, this specific kind of devastation, it's the price of love. And it is paid by every human being, without exception. Let me tell you what grief actually feels like. Not what we are supposed to say that it feels like. What it actually is. When someone truly close to you goes, it doesn't feel like sadness. Sadness is something you feel as it passes. But this is different. This feels like a section of you is being removed. You reach for something that used to be there physically, and now your hand just goes through air. You wake up in the morning, and for a minute or two, you have forgotten. You've forgotten about the loss. And then you remember. And that remembering every single morning, that might be the most brutal part. We do what other people do to cope with it. We distract ourselves. We stay busy. We fill the silence with noise. So we don't have to be with this grief. But here's what the wisdom traditions all agree on. And this is something I had to learn the hard way. Distraction is not the solution. It just delays the reckoning. Grief doesn't expire. It waits. And every time you try to suppress it, it finds new shape to live in as it becomes anxiety, anger, numbness, disconnection, until you finally turn around and look at it directly. So the first thing I want to say is, whatever you are feeling, let yourself feel it. Not performing grief for other people. Go ahead and actually feel it. Sit with it. Letting it move through you instead of managing it. That's the beginning of the only way through. Here is something that gave me a framework for what I was going through. One of the greatest yogic teachers of our time makes a distinction that really helped me at that time. He separates missing someone from grieving someone. Missing someone. That's real. That's love continuing. You feel the absence. You wish they were still here. That's not something you need to fix. But grief, the kind that hollows you out, that's something different. Grief is about your own incompleteness. Somewhere along the way, you made that person a load-bearing wall of your identity. Your sense of wholeness was built around them being there. And when they left, the part of you that only existed in relation to them, that part collapsed too. So, what you are mourning isn't only them. You're mourning a version of yourself that no longer exists. And that's a hard thing to go through. But it's also the truth. Because if grief is about incompleteness, then healing is about rediscovering what was always whole in you before the relationship, before the loss. The grief, it's a pointer. It's pointing at every place where you quietly handed your sense of wholeness. You handed it over to someone else. And when you can see that clearly, you can begin to reclaim it. The Vedic tradition has a map for what actually happens after death. When someone dies, the physical body, what the tradition calls Stula Sharira, is returned to Agni, to fire. This is the Antya Ista the last sacrifice. Antya means final. Isti means offering, final offering. The body dissolves back into the five elements that it came from: the earth, water, fire, air, and space. It returns to what it always was. But the soul, the Atman, that doesn't end. In fact, the Garuda Purana describes in detail what happens to the subtle body after the physical form is released. It says that the soul doesn't immediately reincarnate, and that there is a process, a transition. For the first days after death, the Vedic texts say the soul remains close to you, near the home, near the people that they loved, still in transition. Yama, the Lord of death, and also the Lord of Dharma. Yama receives the identity of the departed. That means the karma that they carried, and what was resolved and what was not resolved. And then the soul begins its journey. The journey toward what is sometimes called Pitruloka, the realm of the ancestors. And this is where us, the living, still have a duty. The Shraddha rituals, which is our duty, the offerings, the prayers, the Pindadan. These are not just symbolic gestures. See, the Vedic tradition says that they actually support the soul's continued movement, that the relationship between the living and the departed doesn't just end. It continues in a different form. And there is a real structure built around grief in the Vedic tradition. 13 days. 13 days of withdrawal, of ritual, of remembrance, a permission to feel. And every year, Pitru Paksha, 16 days dedicated to the ancestors. What this tells you is that the ancient tradition understood something we have almost entirely forgotten. Let's talk about grief. Grief needs a container because the relationship with the departed doesn't end. It needs to be renegotiated because it transitioned into something you couldn't touch, to something that lives in a different dimension in your life. There's a beautiful story in Katha Upanishad that I think is one of the most extraordinary thing ever recorded. A young boy named Nachiketa, through a series of events, he ends up at the door of Yama. As I said, Yama, the Lord of Death himself. But Yama did not answer. So the boy sat there outside for 3 days, without food, no shelter, and no fear. So when Yama returns, he owes the boy 3 wishes. Nachiketa's first 2 boons are not wealth and power. Peace with his father, his first wish. Knowledge of sacred fire ritual, his second wish. But the third boon is the one that echoes across thousands of years. Nachiketa asks Yama, when a person dies, some say the soul continues. Others say it does not. I want to know the truth. His third wish. Wow. And Yama didn't want to give away that truth. And so he tries to bribe the boy. He offers him wealth, power, pleasure. He even offers Nachiketa a life extended by hundreds of years. He told the boy, ask me anything else, but this question is too deep, even for the gods. And this boy says, no. He says, what use is any of it if I don't know what happens when this life ends? What's the use? That's a rare kind of courage. Most of us spend our entire lives running from exactly this question. But Yama, bound by his own word, he finally teaches the boy. He says, the self, the Atman, is never born and never dies. It doesn't come into existence, and it doesn't cease to exist. It's unborn. It's eternal, untouched, even when the body is gone. He said, weapons cannot cut it. Fire cannot burn it. Water cannot touch it. Wind cannot dry it. He said, what you are at your deepest level, death has no access to it. And what you loved in the person who died, the actual core of them, that doesn't go anywhere. Now I want to tell you something personal. After I lost both my parents, after weeks of mourning, after the rituals, after the condolences, after everyone had gone back to their lives, and the silence in my own house became very loud. One day, I was laying down on the couch, not doing anything, just laying there. Maybe drifting toward a nap. And in that quiet, in that space between waking and sleeping, I felt them, both of them, very close. I was not imagining it. Something I felt. And then, within seconds, this thought arrived. I didn't create it. I'm sure of that. It just arrived. It just appeared. They are not gone. They are living through my DNA. Everything they were, their values, their way of moving through the world, their love, their prayers, their mistakes, their wisdom, the things they built and the things they protected. All of it is encoded in me. I carry it in my body, in every cell. In the way I think, in the way I feel. They left themselves behind in me. And suddenly, I understood something that I hadn't before. This is why we have this strong desire to have children. We want children, not just for love or for legacy in this worldly sense. We want children because something in us, at a level deeper than thought, that the only real immortality is this. So that your values continues, your prayers continue, your love continues, carries on. Your spirit, the actual texture of who you are, it keeps moving through the world, through the ones that you gave life to, and through the ones that they gave life to, and on and on and on. The bloodline is not just biology. It's a river of consciousness. River of consciousness moving through time, carrying forward everything that was ever genuinely loved, everything that was genuinely lived. When I understood this, something in my chest released, because they weren't gone. I understood that they were in me. I was the continuation of them. And now, this might sound strange, but when I talk to myself, when I sit in silence, and I go inward, I feel like I am talking to all of them. My mother, my father, their parents, and their parents, the entire lineage standing behind me, watching me, guiding me, protecting me. And all I have to do, all I have ever needed to do, is make them proud, honor what they left, carry it forward, without diminishing it. This is where your grief gets resolved. Not coped with, resolved. And after that realization, something changed. You see, I used to keep their photos up on the wall where I could see them every day. And I noticed every time I looked at those photos, I felt them as separate from me. They are there, and here I am. And with that separation, with that duality, came grief. Every time. The photo kept them outside of me. The moment I understood that they were in me, that they were not separate from what I am, I didn't need the photo. I didn't need the photo the same way anymore. They were no longer on the wall. Duality creates grief. As long as you are here and they are there, the grief has a place to live. But when you stop seeing them as separate, when you understand that, what they were is now you. The grief has nowhere left to stand. So let me give you something practical, because I don't want to leave you with only beautiful ideas. First thing, stop trying to cope with your grief. Coping is management. Coping keeps it alive in a contained way. What you want is release. And release doesn't come from pushing grief away. It comes from moving through it completely until there's nothing left to push. So, sit with the grief. Actually sit with it with no distraction. Cry if that's what happens. Let it be ugly. Let it be as big as it actually is. Because grief that is fully felt moves. Grief that is managed and suppressed begins to calcify. That's the first. Second thing, understand that releasing the grief is releasing them into their new form. As long as you are holding on to the grief, you are, in a strange way, holding them here, tying them down to this plane. When you release, you are trusting their journey. You are letting them continue. That's not abandonment. That's love with open hands. The third thing is to do the rituals. I'm not kidding. If you're from a Vedic background, Look into the Shraddha practice, the Tarpanam practice, the Pitrupaksha observance. See, these are not superstition. They are technology developed over thousands of years for maintaining the relationship with the departed in its new form. They give your grief somewhere else to go. And even if you're not from this tradition, find a ritual or create a ritual. Light a candle, make an offering, say their name out loud with intention. You see, ritual is how the soul processes what the mind cannot process. Fourth, and this is the one that might take the longest. Learn to love yourself, because they are in you now. Every time you neglect yourself, every time you put yourself down, diminish yourself, every time you speak harshly to yourself, and every time you abandon yourself, you are doing that to the continuation of them, your ancestors. You are the vessel through which they still exist in this world. So honor that. Take care of yourself the way you would take care of something precious that they left behind, because that is exactly what you are. You are the living proof that they were here. You are the argument that their life mattered. Act like it. Now let me come back to where we started. Someone asked me a question that they thought I might know the answer to. I don't have a hotline. I don't have certainty. But I have my own experience. And I have thousands of years of wisdom from traditions that looked directly at death instead of looking away. And what they all say, underneath all the different words and practices, is that death is not what we think it is. It's not an ending. It's a transition. And the love that existed between you and the person who died, that doesn't transition. That stays. It changes form, but it doesn't go anywhere. And neither do they. Not really. They are in you. They are in everything they touched. They are in the way you laugh, in the things you care about. They're there. They are in the values you hold without even knowing where your values came from. The grief, when it finally releases, leaves something quiet, something close. like they moved from the photograph on the wall to somewhere just behind the eyes. And they're watching. And they're proud. That's enough. That has always been enough. I am so glad and thankful that you stayed with me for this video. And if this video landed somewhere real for you, if you're carrying a loss and you want to understand how it shows up in your Vedic chart, your karma, your dharma, I do personal Vedic reading at jyotishakti.com. My books, The Enterprising Yogi and Find Your Dharma, they are on my website. And please share this with someone who is in the middle of this. This is not a conversation that happens enough, and it should. Namaste.